But I think in that discussion, we have to take a broad look at what's happening in our country today, which in fact goes beyond Social Security. And what is the reality of American society today? I don't have to tell anybody on the panel that we have millions of seniors who are struggling. I think we have about half of seniors are trying to make it on $30,000 a year or less. 1 out of 3 are struggling economically, unbelievably. Senator Langford, I mean, it's really quite unbelievable. Something like 20% of seniors in America are trying to make it on $15,000 a year. I mean, that's unbelievable. I don't know anybody survives on that. But within that reality of so many of our seniors struggling, there is another reality that has to be placed on the table. And that is today we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had in the history of the United States of America. You remember the Gilded Age of Rockefeller and J.P. Carnegie? Much worse right now. So if you're going to talk about saving Social Security, you got to throw that into the hopper. And what Senator Warren was saying in legislation that I have, which is called the Social Security Expansion Act, is not complicated. And you want bipartisanship? Republicans support it outside of here. In the real world, Democrats support it, independents support it, not very complicated. Should Elon Musk pay the same percentage of his income, which he doesn't pay anyhow, into the Social Security Trust Fund as a fireman or a nurse? Anybody think that makes sense? Nobody does. And the bottom line here is at a time when the people on top have never, ever had it so good and seniors are struggling, we've got to do what senior advocates for years have said, lift that cap. And Mr. Chairman, if we do that, in 2023, the chief actuary of the Social Security Administration found that we could extend the life of Social Security for 75 years. That's pretty good, Senator Langford. We could increase benefits by $2,400 a year. So we're doing two things, helping seniors trying to get by and increasing the expanding the solvency on Social Security. And we do that without raising taxes by 1 penny on the bottom 91% of the Americans who are in less than $250,000 a year. That's the third. So I would say to my friend, Senator Langford, that has got to be thrown into the hopper. You can't just talk about Social Security in isolation. Let me now take a moment to ask a few questions to some of our panelists here. Please, brief answer. I don't have a lot of time. Do you believe we should increase the retirement age? Ms. Vallis?
Our research finds that Americans strongly oppose raising the retirement age.
Ms. Lamont?
No.
Sir?
Yes. Yes, Americans are living longer, and raising the age is part of a comprehensive package is one way, I think, to actually help people build more wealth, get more work, more health. Yeah. There's a lot of benefits.
I would just say in response to that, half of older workers today have nothing in savings as they face retirement. Second question is, do you believe we should consider capping or reducing Social Security COLAs? Ms. Vallis?
Again, our research finds that Americans strongly oppose doing that.
Ms. Lamont?
We would oppose as well.
Sir?
I'm open to it. Okay. The current inflation we use overstates, COLA uses overstates inflation. I think if we cap it for the highest earners, it's a pretty smart idea that can extend solvency.
Ms. Vallis, do you believe it is appropriate that Elon Musk, the wealthiest man alive, pays the same amount of taxes into Social Security as someone who makes $184,000 a year?
Americans across party lines and pretty much all walks of life think that doesn't make a lot of sense. And I'll tell you, I've got in-laws in my family who supported this current president. And the first thing that they asked me when they found out what I do is, why hasn't Congress dealt with the payroll tax cap yet?
Ms. Lamont?
We support looking at raising the payroll tax. We know that's part of what has to be looked at if we're going to talk about not cutting benefits.
Sir?
I think a comprehensive bipartisan solution will probably require raising the cap.
Yeah, I think we should look at raising the cap and also at capping benefits that can sometimes exceed $100,000 for the wealthiest senior couples.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. The discussion around Social Security solvency tends to focus on two things, cost savings and program efficiency. Now, while it wouldn't directly impact the Social Security Trust Fund, one proposal with strong bipartisan public support is reforming the outdated SSI asset limits that prevent low-income seniors and people with disabilities from building even modest savings. That's why I introduced with my good friend over there, Senator Cassidy, the SSI Savings Penalty Elimination Act. The bill would modernize asset limits and empower SSI recipients to work, save, and better plan for their future. Ms. Vallis, can you explain how the SSI Savings Penalty Elimination Act would improve the administration of the SSI program, and why it's so important to include SSI in the broader conversation about strengthening Social Security?
Senator, thank you so much for your leadership on this issue. And I also want to say Senator Cassidy, Senator Lankford, Senator Wyden, everyone on this committee who has supported that piece of legislation, just thank you for your leadership. The last time that SSI's asset limits were increased, even for inflation, was 1984. That happens to be the year I was born, so it's been a minute. And what that means is people aren't able to save even modest amounts of saving, even $2,000 for an individual. It's trapping people at a level where dignity isn't even within reach. And what that piece of legislation would do, and I should note, our polling finds that more than 2/3 of Americans across party lines and every walk of life support raising or even eliminating SSI's savings penalties. But what it would do is to address what my colleague Jason Fichtner, who helped to lead Social Security under President Bush, has called the most regressive anti-savings policy in federal law. It would also be a win-win for the Social Security Administration because it would relieve a really costly, administratively burdensome rule for them to actually run. This is a common sense thing that needs to be part of this conversation, as well as other long outdated rules in SSI that need to be updated. And I'm glad to see this committee starting to pay bipartisan attention.
Thank you. Ms. Lamond, you would agree with that?
We support that as well.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Lamond, let me ask you this. Congress hasn't acted on recommendations of a presidential commission since 1983. 1983. Americans want to know that they can depend on the Social Security program, and yet we've gone 43 years without pursuing meaningful solutions. What barriers have prevented Congress from acting on recommendations provided by commissions?
Well, I think it is a very, very challenging issue and very hard to come together in a bipartisan way to address it. We're now at a point where I think we all agree, and everybody, I believe, has spoken to it today, that the time has come when it must be addressed. And our preference is not a commission. It's to come with regular order to the Senate Finance Committee, House Ways and Means Committee, debate, review all of the proposals. There are many, many proposals to make Social Security more secure.
And can I say the Commission's proposals are bipartisan, correct?
Pardon me?
They're bipartisan, correct?
The proposals I was referring to are bipartisan. Many of them are bipartisan within the Congress.
Yeah.
Members who have come together, worked on various approaches. Some are not, but many are bipartisan.
Thank you. Mr. Goldwyn, this year's annual Social Security Trustees Report cited Republicans' H.R. 1 as one of 3 factors that increase the actuarial deficit of the Social Security Trust Fund. In fact, this law, which all but one of my Republican colleagues on this committee voted for, accounts for 25% of this increase, the largest single-year change in actuarial balance in over 30 years. Mr. Goldwyn, can you tell us more about what H.R. 1 has done to accelerate Social Security insolvency and what this means for beneficiaries long-term?
Absolutely. So one source of revenue for Social Security is the income taxation of benefits. I believe AARP actually supported a provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill that reduced taxation of benefits indirectly by expanding the senior deduction. That, in addition to the lower rates, means we're now getting less money coming into the trust fund, which just brings that crisis state even sooner.
Thank you. I notice my time is up. I thank you again. I'm like my colleagues. We need bipartisan solutions here. We've got to fix this, and that means working together. And I know working together, and there's a lot of great ideas. If we would just make this a focus and a priority, we can get something done. I thank you all for staying in this fight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Cortez Masto. And as you may have noticed some activity up here, we have a vote underway. I don't expect any other senators to show up before I wrap up the committee, the hearing today. So I want to thank our witnesses for appearing today. With that in mind, I remind my colleagues that the deadline for submitting any questions for the record is 5 p.m. on Wednesday, August 12th. And with that, the committee is adjourned.